Hey, what is up guys, Matt Coop here, aka MODC Architecture, and welcome back to another video. Now today I'm going to be showing you the first part of what I hope to be a long running series, but this is regarding my uni work. It is from model to drawing, so I'm going to be showing you my process from modelling a piece of architecture or design and showing you how I go through the workflow of bringing it into Photoshop, editing it as a drawing, and then how it looks as a final product. So I hope you enjoy, and let's get into the video. So just to briefly explain what the model is, it's a concise amalgamation of the year's studies. It brings together the abandoned city, the revisioning of the abandoned city, this kind of theatrical viewpoint of said city, along with the recyclability and the verticality that comes along with a city that can be inspired by Liam Young's Planet City, which the project is heavily sort of inspired by, and also Nimmer Studio is inspired by. So the layering of the model is very important because we're looking at foreground, midground, backgrounds, and sort of trying to demonstrate layers of importance, but also in terms of time scale, where the city crumbles and at what time the city is built and at what time I'm intercepting the city and kind of investigating into where I can bore, carve and intersect with existing buildings so that the entire project can kind of make a bit more sense regarding the abandonedness and revisioning the city so that it may not be abandoned in the future. This is also a futuristic city, so it needs to have an element of, I guess, otherworldliness, and that's what this model tries to bring forth. So next is what I'm going to bring into the model, what I'm going to be showing you bringing into the model. So as you can see, the model's already pretty much finished, or at least built to a certain point where I was happy to present it to my tutor, and that's because I've been working on this model for some weeks now. That's because we're at the end of the year and I couldn't do a video from the start because my head was elsewhere, so I do apologise for that. However, I'm going to be bringing in the sort of futuristic side of things. You know, I got comments on this model recently that it wasn't sort of organic enough, or there wasn't enough kind of intrusive architecture within the city, and that's sort of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to invade an abandoned city and bring it into the future and repopulate it. That's kind of like the idea behind the project in its most simple terms, I guess. So I'm going to be bringing in, think of futuristic drones or ships in the sky. I'm going to be bringing in kind of these ridiculous looking skyscrapers into the background that have kind of carved atriums, etc., that just really, I guess, don't work or shouldn't work perhaps, or at least look like I'm working into sort of being invasive into these buildings and they're not quite finished. And then when you go into the foreground, you'll see these buildings that I've intervened with that are finished. So it's kind of building up the sort of timeline, building up a story within the city. So it's sort of the model demonstrates a conclusion of the project and also gives a timeline of the project as well. Also kind of just bringing in a couple more bits of rubbish and recycling just to demonstrate that the project would need sort of some sort of recyclability about the abandoned city so that we're not wasting material, etc., which brings in the carbon argument or the environmental argument. So we're kind of trying to pull a lot of different strings here to get this model looking and meaning sort of everything that I want it to be, sort of making it its best version of itself. So yeah, hopefully we can get that done. So the next thing that I am doing is constructing this semi-intervened building. So I studied a lot of Gaudi and the columns or sort of vast architectural gestures that he used, and so I'm going to be bringing that inspiration and the models I made after being inspired by that into these high-rise elements, and I'm going to choose a specific high-rise element from this array of models, array of skyscrapers, just so that I don't break my computer, because you know this model's already very big, so you need to be very careful when doing this sort of stuff, because you don't want to lag out your computer, lose all your work. So also make sure you save regularly when you're doing this kind of stuff. So as you can see, computer's being a bit laggy, so I had to delete everything and then bring these Gaudi models into this semi-intervened building. So I'm making sure that everything is a poly surface, so that I can then cut away and make these light tunnels and atria that sort of show this intrusive kind of mesmerizing organic structure infiltrating this very column and slab-like structure. Next, I talked about needing the recyclability of the city to be apparent, so I'm just bringing up some rubbish and trash and wooden panels, etc. into the foreground so that that can be communicated more effectively. After finishing this, I'm now concentrating on what is kind of the more futuristic and perhaps less believable part, which are these sort of warships, or not warships, but kind of spaceships or helicarrier, something of that sort of sentiment. And I want those to be organized in such a way that it looks like they're sort of hovering over the background, hovering over the skyscrapers in the background. So I'm having to kind of experiment with some quick renders in the same format that I would like my final render to be in. I do it in pixels and then convert it into millimeters afterwards. And then after this, I'm playing again with the organic structural nature of the model, or at least the intrusiveness of that organic structural nature, by taking some inspiration from Zaha's work, which is very organic in its architectural gestures, and I'm just bringing that into the foreground so that some of my models that are perhaps smaller aren't quite as alone, and so the model looks a bit sort of fuller and also can be shown as a fuller city, I guess. So now I'm just bringing it into Photoshop. Photoshop is an incredibly important part of the process, and I'll be opening up the original file that I have, which is from Rhino. It's a saved image from Rhino, 785 by 535 millimeters, and then combining it, or at least combining the color scheme of a previous iteration of this model. The color scheme that I've tried to use throughout the project, and it's this kind of faded pastel blue, kind of greyish blue, and it's worked really nicely. It's quite a nice color scheme in my opinion. And so I'm just selecting all the layers from this Photoshop file that I've used. I've kind of played with the blacks and whites, also the saturation, and also the color balance of the photo or of the file. And I'm just copying and pasting that over into this new file, which I can then use as a template to make this image look nice. So I have 2 layers of the image in this template to make the color scheme what it is, and so I need to just make sure that I get rid of the old images and copy and paste this image to put it into the slots that it needs to be in. I'll make a video where I run down why I like this template for a color scheme, and also how to do it. And so now I'm just working on the background. So there's this new feature on Photoshop called generative fill or content aware fill, and it's really easy now to make these sort of super sleek backgrounds or addition to any image. And so I had an original background or cloud color scheme or texture, and so I just wanted a little bit more of that, and so I had to do it for the entire image and then just copy and paste or just take away the parts that I didn't need. So I moved the background up to where I thought it had the most sort of draw, and then I just cut away the parts that I didn't need to have this finished image. Now this is iteration 1 of the model. It's so different, and I had a chat with my tutor, and then we moved on to the second iteration, which sort of brings in more of the city feel. It gets rid of this screen completely, and we take away the theatrical feel a little bit more. So we have a little bit less Cinema Studio, a bit more Planet City kind of vibe. And so this is the second iteration, which is what I copy and pasted the color scheme from. And then the third iteration, finalized and finished, ready for my final jury. I'm very happy with this model. Let me know what you think of it and whether you think it communicates what I'm intending. But other than that, thank you so much for watching, everyone. I've really enjoyed speaking about the models and also the Photoshop elements, and I hope this was helpful to you in some way or another, or at least interesting. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you and goodbye.